Welcome to Brands on Tap, the podcast where we discuss all things brand related.
So whether you're a business owner, industry expert, or simply interested, this podcast is for you.
Hi guys, welcome to another edition of Brands on Tap. And today's episode, we're going to be talking about the rise of good enough design and the implications surrounding that. So, Rob, so what or why does this matter? Because we've noticed in our industry that, and certainly clients, we've seen competitors, we've seen other organizations, and certainly in our social feeds and things, where the collateral that people are putting out there into the world doesn't seem to be on brand, seems to be quite mismatched. If you could just explain why that matters. Why does the rise of good enough design matter to your brand and to your business?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right in the sense that if, as a whole, industries are more accepting of lower quality output, whether that's social media, whether that's on the web, or whether that's just graphics in general, essentially the bar is being lowered as the mean bar, if you like, of what is deemed acceptable is being lowered year on year almost. I think we've seen.
Yeah.
And I think that's also, I don't know that COVID's had a big impact on that, but I think it would have had some influence in the mix, because essentially people got used to working from home. They got used to kind of being a bit more split away from teams and a bit more where, like you would have been used to having that collaborative approach in the kind of older creative model, where you've got that team involved, you've got more collaboration, you've got more discussion, you've got more creativity. I think probably to a detriment, of that as well, without meaning to, COVID created that split working environment, and teams would have then been more disconnected. They would have been less likely to have those thorough conversations and more likely to just kind of go with whatever they felt was okay from where they were positioned. Obviously, I'm talking on a much higher level agency model, but I'm mentioning that as an influence rather than a kind of cause. I think that definitely that's influenced the acceptance. And with that, you've got obviously circles around those teams where you've got in-house designers, you've got in-house creatives, you've got marketing departments, you've got businesses and marketing departments, design departments. So further afield from those creative agencies, you've got this attitude towards people just being able to do things more themselves because of this sort of halo environment.
That's true. I think, and also the cost implications. That came into play, especially through COVID.
Yes.
And more prevalent.
Yeah.
And also coming out the other end as well for a lot of businesses, I guess, the cost. Do we need to use an external creative agency to do our output? We've seen the rise of in-house teams growing within our sector.
Yeah.
What we've noticed, obviously, like you said, the quality of the creative output is, not as good as it used to be.
No.
So the implications are, it's things like, keeping the collateral that your output is on brand, because more often, we're seeing like the likes of Canva, for instance, using templates, Wix online, systems like that, where, a company now, because they've got an in-house team and they're thinking that they're saving money, they're having to pay for these systems like Canva and Wix and whatever other systems they're using.
Yeah.
So it's a cost implication there.
Yeah.
They're also paying for their staff to learn these bits of software. But these staff members generally don't have a design background.
No.
So we're seeing stuff now where, whenever we're creating a new brand for a client, for instance, that we're creating the logo, we're creating the type styles, we're creating even things like tone of voice, color palettes, image styles, everything for that client, so that everything looks like it's part of a suite, if you like. So whenever your target audience then sees that suite or an element from that suite, so it could be a social post, could be a website, could be email template, email footers, could be anything. They can tell that that is an asset from your business.
Yeah.
Because it's using the right type styles, it's using the right color palette, it's using even layouts and things like that. You know, the use of, or the good use of white space, and utilizing, you know, good layout skills, typography as well, image styles. And what we're seeing is, because they can do it in-house and they're using, say, a Canva template, yes, they might be able to chuck their colors in to that, but more often than not, we're seeing sort of blended colors. The colors are similar to a brand's colors, but they're not the same. So the typography as well, sometimes they're not able to use the brand font because they're, you know, locked into this template system. So what we see is like an agency such as ours creating this, you know, brand style for this client. And then over time, we're seeing more and more, not with so much with our clients, we're certainly seeing with a lot of external clients, where we see this, what we call brand drift, where it starts off where, you know, people are starting to recognize the brand because of the typography, because of the colors, the image style, everything else, as looking consistent across, you know, everything that they do. And over time, because they're doing more and more things in-house with an untrained designer, you see this brand drift.
Yeah.
And so the type styles might change. The logo might even change. Sometimes we've seen that. You know, the logo sometimes might be stretched. It might be elongated. You know, they might change the colors within the logo. They might even change the type style within the logo. We've seen that happen. Or even the quality of what they're doing as well. Sometimes we're seeing like logos dropped in where they're bitmapped, so they're all pixelated and not as crisp as they would be if it's created by an agency using SVG files or EPS files or something, where it's vectorized, where it's all crisp and clean. So over time, yeah, we're definitely seeing this brand drift, where, you know, an agency is set out with a really nice consistent brand style, and over time it's just being eroded away to the point where, you know, the end user, their target audience, is basically not understanding who this brand is. You know, they don't instantly recognize their social post to say, oh, that must be so and so, because it could be anyone else.
Yeah.
And I think that's, for me, where, you know, the biggest problems lie, is that, you know, we're trained individuals who collectively come together with years of experience to create all these brand assets and brand identities for these clients. And sadly, it's being eroded away by, you know, untrained, or more often, not everyone, I'm not saying everyone's untrained within in-house teams, but
No, of course not.
you certainly do see an erosion, though, of the brand identity, really.
And so it is stretching the in-house team's roles as well, I think, because they're not necessarily not trained. But if somebody's a marketer or a designer, and they're an asset to that business, it's very easy for that business to stretch them further than what they've actually employed them to do, and just say, well, if you're a marketer, then you can probably have a go at doing this bit of graphics or this design, or actually you can probably have a go at Canva, or we've got some website updates that need doing. You know, you can probably have a go at those. That's, I think, also a very risky decision that in-house teams make, or business owners of those employees kind of assign, you know, employees that have got skills in sort of circle areas that are around that industry,
that
or that
overlap a bit,
that discipline, but they're not a set designer. And I think, that's the risk. If we go back to the first question, I suppose, which I probably haven't directly answered still yet in terms of you saying what's the risk.
Yeah.
It's the overall damage that does to the brand, which we've spoken about now a few times about other podcasts we've done, where we've said, it's that long-term damage. And I suppose it's the drift, like you were saying, over time of, if someone stops caring about, is that font quite right? Is the layout as we put it? Is the color right? If that expectation is dropped, then it's where that ends up in terms of, say, 5-10 years time, where people are looking at branding and judging a brand based on the aesthetics and the appeal, and thinking I no longer really care about that because I see so much that's random or so much that's untidy or so much that's off brand that I've almost trained myself to not deem that as an important factor on.
Yeah.
And I think that's it's a huge shame from a design point of view, because like you said, you've got trained designers that not only when we pass somebody the brand guidelines do we expect them to keep colours, fonts and things, but it's also the messaging, the hierarchy of that asset, the purpose of it, why is that asset going out. And I think there's a lot of a churn culture with in-house because it's not their skill set directly. They get assigned, we need some assets for this, we need you to create that. They're not going to sit there and give it the time and the effort and the consideration that we would as to why is that asset being created. We've given them a template and perhaps they can abide by it, and then they'll churn the asset out. That's another one done, another one done, and you risk that also, which you're commonly bringing up, is that repetition of, yes, you want to look like your brand is consistent, but you don't want to be putting out posts that all look the same, or that all have the same header style and the same text. People aren't engaging with them, and if they're not engaging with them, you can have a year's worth of in-house assets that have gone out with very poor engagement.
That's a good point, actually. I mean, excuse me, whenever we're creating a brand collateral for any of our clients, we do create a suite of collateral. And although we will consider type styles, image style, and make sure that the elements are consistent throughout, we normally create like a secondary color palette as well, for that very purpose, so that there is that lack of repetition, if you like, especially in social feeds and things like that. And we also do very much encourage our clients, again, especially on social media, where they're taking their own images, they're interspersing it with the branded content. Because you're right that you can get blind to a brand because you keep seeing the same thing all the time. So this is why we really do encourage clients to create their own content, but still adhere to the set brand guidelines. So that if you're going to put text over an image, for instance, and you take the image yourself, make sure the image looks aligned to your brand style, first and foremost. And if you're using any text on an image, for instance, then use the same type style that has been set within the brand guidelines. So there is still that brand consistency throughout. But I agree that we're not sort of telling people that need to have the same looking content all the time everywhere, because that would just be insane. And that ends up to brand blindness, basically, that people will just skim over it because it's another one of those ads. So we're very mindful of that, so we're not advocating that that's the right
this
route.
Is the template, that's all you've got, sort of thing. But I agree with you, and I think that's the difference, is we can vary those templates to suit the purpose, and we always go top level with clients anyway, but it's to suit the purpose and the nature of what is that trying to do. And if that is just a simple message or it is just a simple alert, then potentially that base template will fit the bill. But if there's something a little bit more visually required, or something that's more text based, or a mixture of the two, then we can have that experience from trying and testing it with all our other clients to advise the client and say, look, this has got the most likelihood of getting a result. You've got to consider people, where they're using it, where they're seeing it, how busy are they. All these decisions are essentially over the course of a campaign of 12 to 24 months. Every little decision we make has got to be considering that, and I think that's going to result in more. If it results in 5-10 more engagements or more clicks, then over the course of the duration, that's the reason you'd use us over just blindly saying to an in-house person again that's not really comfortable doing it. Arguably, a lot of the people we speak to,
Yeah,
they're not very
that's very true.
comfortable. They get thrown on, oh, there's this tool called Canva that you can use that markets to everybody as a DIY tool, so it must be good.
Yeah.
And that's another angle, another avenue of concern for us in itself, is the whole marketing of these platforms. But I think it's that people are a victim of what's out there and what's
Yeah.
being given to them, and they're not stopping and thinking, actually, what's best for us as a business? Does that represent our business?
Yeah.
How we would represent our business, or are we cutting corners
Yep.
and giving people jobs that they shouldn't really be doing because it's convenient? But actually, what long-term effect is that having on
Yeah.
our brand?
Yep. There's also, I mean, there's the refinement of the information
Yeah.
as well. I mean, obviously we're trained in taking quite often complex business problems or complex marketing problems and refining that
Correct.
into a single piece of collateral.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So making sure that we're creating very eye-catching headlines that are going to engage the end user. It might be supplemented with supporting body text or sub-headline. And then we're then also looking at the call to action. What is the best call to action for that piece of collateral? So I'm going to ditch this blimmin' watch in a minute. It's driving me nuts. But yeah, sorry about that. So yeah, and it's just that really is that refinement, that level of refinements, because sometimes these business and marketing issues are significant.
Yeah.
And trying to put that into a single piece of collateral. We've often seen it where, see posters, for instance, and they've got War and Peace on them. Roller banners is a classic example where people are exhibiting, and we often see that these roller banners have been created in-house, and they've literally got, like 1,000 words on the roller banner.
Yeah.
Who the hell is going to stand right next to that particular stand at that exhibition and read your roller banner verbatim like a brochure?
Yeah,
they're not going to do it. So
true.
that's where using an agency or graphic designer, they're professionals. They will take these complex problems
It's part of the skill,
refine
isn't it?
Yeah,
it's part of the skill of the
refine
job.
it so you've got a concise piece of collateral that is aimed at the target audience. And has got a very clear call to action. And that is a skill in itself, and not everybody can do it.
No. And then there's the whole efficiency angle, which we always touch on, which I think is also very important, in that if it's not what you do regularly, like any role, like we always go back to the kind of builder electrician analogy of if there was a tool that came out that allowed you to kind of do things DIY for yourself, or you could do some electrics around your house because this tool helped you or AI helped you. Yes, potentially you could do it, but what you're overlooking is the fact that it's not your skill set. And are you as quick as somebody that's done it all day every day? And do you know all the pitfalls, and do you know the reason that certain things won't work? And I think that's the main thing that we can offer, is like you've just said, is we're not just doing it to tick a box and say, that's been created, that's done. We're always doing it to say, right, is there too much copy on here? Is that clear enough? Who are the target audience? Why do they need to know this? Why are they bothered by it? Why are they going to spend time looking at it? We're always thinking of those kinds of things, which again, I think somebody that's just been assigned the job or given a template, or it's basically been guided by us to say, we've set this up for you now, you can go off and do it. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're either competent or that they should be doing it, because the bottom line is it the right thing that the brand should be letting out? It's like somebody going into a street with a megaphone and shouting a message about a brand. That message, everyone's going to hear that and everyone's going to respond to it. So if it's the wrong message, you might well have got somebody that's already employed to go out and do it for you, but what benefit has that been to your brand?
Good analogy. I like that.
Came up with that on the fly actually. But yeah, for me, that's kind of how it should be looked at, and not short term, and not, well, we can save some money here, we can do that there. And as we said, I do accept that a lot of it is marketing from these tools that market themselves, like Canva, like Wix, like Ionas, like all these tools out there that basically say you can do it yourself. They're not helping, because we're trying to tell people you shouldn't. and there's a reason you shouldn't, but they're trying to be, well, we're capitalists, we want to make as much money from our product as we can, so we're going to market to the masses.
Yeah.
And I think that's where there's a disconnect there of people not assessing the value of that until it's too late.
Yeah.
And that could sometimes purely be down to, you know, the fact that a lot of these bigger companies have marketing departments.
Yeah.
And to the marketing department, that sounds very appealing. And I would agree, you know, if I was in the marketing department myself and somebody, you know, that was managing my spend or my budget was saying, how can we cut costs? Well, it sounds like a no-brainer.
Get rid of the designers.
Yeah, get rid of the designers. Basically, or use this tool that's just popped up that says you can do it yourself, that says anyone can do it, that's got templates in it which are very appealing, and that half of them look quite nicely designed. They look quite tidy. You can't argue that.
They do look good, actually, a lot of them, but they are the same across the board.
They are the same across the board, and also they've not been sat down and considered to be, is that the right design for what you need, or is that just something that because it looks good you can adapt it?
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference. And again, if you don't understand hierarchy, typography, messaging, copywriting, you're still in an environment that you're uncomfortable with. You're trying to move something around in an environment that you don't understand. And I think that's the bottom line, is you can make it work, but should you be making it work?
Yeah, I mean, should you make it work? That's a good point anyway, because you know, there's cases where we've had clients come to us and say, we need a poster or we need, you know, a landing page or whatever, to market this product or this service. Yeah. And we're like, well, why do you need that? Yeah. You know, and that whole process, that thought process of sitting down and analysing, well, is this the best form of media for you to market that service or that product? And quite often it isn't. No. You know, and we've had experience working with other clients over, well, decades now. Of course. Show my age. Where we can advise, you know, hand on heart to say that, you know, we genuinely think that this is the wrong route for you to market that product or that service. Yeah. We know that this type of thing would be better off being done, created using, I don't know, could be a video or whatever it might be. Yeah. And so we can advise. So whereas if it's an in-house team, you know, quite often it's somebody higher up that is said to maybe a marketer, like you say, that might have taken on a design role as well using Canva, let's say. Yeah. And said, right, we need a poster that's, you know, it's A4 that needs to say X, Y, Z. That individual is less likely to question, of course, should we do a poster? You know, shouldn't we be doing a video or whatever? Yeah. So, you know, it's just that whole that stopgap, if you like, of, you know, just questioning things based on experience. Yeah. That,
designer, you know, consultant, basically.
That sometimes is lacking. Yeah. I mean, I get that an in-house team, a larger in-house team, they might have been doing a number of different things using numerous different types of media, so that they are likely to be well versed and experienced as to what works and what doesn't work. So not saying that every in-house team is going to act the same. No. But certainly where there's less individuals, you're less likely to find, you know, that they have the knowledge and experience to know whether this is actually going to help and market our business or it's not.
Agreed. And even where there's an experienced in-house team, they've openly said it to us that they value the kind of outside eyes on what they're doing to kind of add some fresh influence on there. So even if it's just a campaign by campaign based influence, working with an in-house team, I mean, we've got no issue with doing that. And it's if it's a good in-house team, it's quite enjoyable for us.
Yeah, we do it a lot.
We do, yeah. It's better for us to work with an in-house team that are experienced and knowledgeable, that want our help, and they know where our input is valid and we know how we can help them, than trying to persuade somebody that's got their blinkers up saying, like, you know, I'm very guarded, I've done this all for our business, I'm very precious about it. It's harder for somebody like that to be open-minded, to sort of listen, to say, well, actually, what's your opinion on it, and is it working? Because they've been the only person in there that's been in control of that. Yeah. And I think you've got the more broad kind of marketing departments, design departments, where they understand the roles. Yeah. They're going to be far more amenable to us coming in saying, we completely get why you've done that, but have you thought about this? Or maybe this could be better. And we work with them and help them to kind of develop and grow that side of it. And I think, like you say, we've done that on numerous occasions. That's not an issue at all. I think for us, and certainly for me personally, the bottom line is what's best for the business. What are we going to advise them? And sometimes they don't like to hear what we've got to say because it could be controversial, it could be a little bit blunt. But I'd much rather do that than kind of be an agency that's a kind of pixel pusher type logic of, we've been asked to do this, so we're going to do this and send it to you, even if we don't think it's right, or we feel very strongly that that's not the right route for you. No. And I'd say 95+% of our clients do generally appreciate us being very honest about it.
Oh, they do.
And that's why they use us. Otherwise, what value are we to them in that sense?
Yeah, I mean, we are guardians of their brand, ultimately.
Yeah, we are.
And we're also guardians of their ad spend or their marketing spend.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's quite, you know, it's one of those things where, you know, we have the responsibility and we're happy to take that responsibility on. And, you know, we could, if we were inexperienced, we could mess it up, you know, but we have, you know, decades, like I said, of experience. We know generally what works and what doesn't work. We are big fans as well of testing things as well. So we do a lot of A/B testing, certain things, but also it's that whole joined up approach, you know, that we can, you know, and we do with a lot of things. Going back to the advice thing that I was talking about a second ago, we'll advise a client, like if they want to come to us and say that there's one type of media they want to do, they want to spend, I don't know, 50 grand on this thing. We might turn around, because of our experience and our knowledge, and turn around and say, well, look, that 50 grand might be better off spent on 5 or 6 different things, each of which we can measure as well. That's the other advantage of using an agency. Quite often we can set up this joined up approach where we can put, you know, UTM tracking codes or, you know, QR codes or whatever it might be, some form of tracking metrics in there, so that, you know, they're spending money with us, and sometimes significant money with us, but the end result is they know where all the traffic's coming from, you know, and then we can advise then even partway through a campaign, this type of thing isn't working, this is, let's you know, take less, remove some of the budget from this area, put it into that area, we know that's working really well. And this comes with experience and, you know,
and being interested in the brand and caring about the clients and the people we work for. I think it's having that vested interest in trying to make sure that what we do is always with their best interest in mind. Which I think is obviously always where we come from. But it's not always easy to communicate that initially, because they're kind of thinking, you know, everything's monetized, you're just trying to upsell things to us, and that initial relationship, it's sometimes hard to get that across, to say, you know, we'll prove to you that everything we do, we're sticking our neck on the line for it, really, because we're saying to you, this is what we advise, this is what we want to do. The buck's going to stop with us. So on that note, you know, with regards to letting somebody in-house do something for us, or certainly from a web example, if you know, somebody said, I want to update all my stuff on my website, and suddenly in our heads, you know, there's certain skills you need, there's certain awarenesses you need of how certain things should be structured, the detriment of that if it doesn't happen that way, which they won't have any idea about, and yet we're still employed or trusted to oversee it and provide them with the metrics for it. So say it's social media graphics, say it's a website update or a new page, if we're responsible for making those things work, but we don't have the control over editing them, updating them, creating them, it's a very sticky position for us to be in, because we're sort of saying, we'll help you and we'll guide you, but then suddenly you're going to come back to us and say, well, that hasn't worked, and this campaign's not got enough clicks, and this hasn't been as effective as it should be for a landing page. We're then in a sticky position to sort of say, well, that's because we didn't have the opportunity to create it for you. You know, you've done that in-house. And had we done it and had we influenced it, and you'd paid us a bit of time to actually do it, the return on investment would have been probably 10, 20 times what you'd have got if you let somebody that's never created one before have a go at it and just hope it lands somewhere with someone.
That's very true.
And I think that for me, that's where it's difficult for us. And I've spoken to other agencies where they'll say, you know, if I'm responsible for something as a report, I'll get the client to sign a contract to say, okay, that's fine, but you're no longer responsible for the results of this.
Yep.
And I completely understand that,
Yeah,
because
I get
it's
that.
a very difficult position to be in.
Yeah, it is.
And I think that's why it's so important that when we push things and when we say we want to do them, there's always a reason for that. There's always a justification.
I think this is a misconception as well. I think for some clients that, you know, they think that we're land grabbing. We want as much work as we possibly can get. And there is an argument that, you know, obviously we need to survive as a business, but if we think that there's elements that can be done in house, we're, you know,
very open to say it.
We're very open to say to a client, look, there's elements that, you know, like changing names on a business card or something like that. If that can be done in house, your end, you can send that to print your end. Fill your boots, do it. We have for internal documents as well. We've even, you know, helped clients with setting up Canva templates, for instance.
A lot, yeah.
And so more so like for internal things, where, you know, if certain traits creep in, like typefaces change or colours creep or whatever, it's less important in that regard. So we can help clients do that kind of thing. But generally, you know, we will try and control the overarching brand identity.
Yeah.
Because we have a vested interest in making sure that your business does well.
100%.
Right? If we don't do our job properly, you're basically not going to come back.
No.
You know?
That's it. Yeah, that is very, very true.
We've got clients that have been with us, you know, for 10 years plus, and they trust what we do. You know, if we deliver and we're very open about what we're doing and they can see results by what we're doing, then why shouldn't they trust us?
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, you're right.
And this is where this, you know, coming back right to the very beginning where I said about brand creep. You know, when your brand starts to suffer where, you know, too many things are being done in-house and they're not part of your brand identity, you know, colours are changing, typefaces changing, image styles changing and all the rest of it, then, you know, what ultimately your end user, your target audience aren't going to trust your brand, right? And if they don't trust you, then they're going to start looking elsewhere. They're going to look at your competitors. And so this is why, you know, we always want to try and be brand guardians for any client that we work with, because we genuinely care about your business and the outcomes of your business. You know, we want to try and put collateral together that ultimately is going to increase inquiries or sales or both, or, you know, for services or products or whatever it's doing.
Yeah, of course.
If it's not achieving results, then, you know, we may as well pack our bags and go home, because, you know, we're only in this game really to, well, love what we do, which we do. But ultimately we want to see our clients achieve so they keep coming back to us.
Yeah. Well, the satisfaction for us is in knowing what we've done has made a difference. I personally, and I know that we all feel the same in the agency. Why would we want to do something that is just a box ticking exercise that we see makes absolutely no difference to that client?
We wouldn't want to.
Every bit of design you do, you've got some personal creative input in. Every sort of website I create is structured and planned and strategized to actually get a result for somebody. And if it doesn't get the result, you know, it personally aggrieves me, because I think, what have we done wrong? What can we do better? How can we improve it? And you're constantly trying to get that deliverable better and better. And I think that's the difference between just somebody thinking, oh, I've ticked a box now, I've got that design done, got the website design. I think that's, you know, harking back to the topic of what we've been saying about the rise of good enough design. I think that's where that detriment can kind of creep in. And then on top of that, you've got the whole kind of elephant in the room of the AI model, where, you know, which we've not discussed in depth yet, but the whole, on top of all these softwares being sold to people, and this, this isn't your skill set, but you can have a go at it. You've now got this kind of elephant in the room of AI. So I don't know much about something, so I can use AI to fill that gap.
Yeah.
And I think that's only exacerbating the issue of these tools and this mentality of we can do it ourselves.
Yeah.
And also reflecting badly on us to kind of people to come back and say, well, are you using AI? And if you are, can we have a discount and can we have it cheaper? Because there's this assumption that by using AI, we're not having any input and we're not doing it ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think that's just, that's going to have to, there's going to be a wave that we're going to have to ride, and a hump that people are going to have to get over, because it's going to affect every industry, hands down, with certain aspects, some more than others. And I think in ours, with image generation creeping in and video, it's going to have, obviously there's going to be an impact for that for us, and that's going to affect this kind of good enough design mentality. But there's an opportunity, I think, for us to kind of show people what we've spoken about, that if you do use an agency to manage everything and you do produce very high quality, consistent branding, the likelihood is, in the current climate, you're going to stand out a mile, because most people at that level is dropping.
Yeah.
So the people that are still paying attention and are caring about it, the top end of the brands, they're still showing up for what actually want to be represented by, and what they respond to for their audience.
I mean, that's a really good point, that we've said in a previous podcast about humanizing a brand.
Yeah, exactly.
So the more you use AI, you can tell, whether, especially at the moment, I mean, in time, yes, the imagery is getting, well, just scarily realistic.
Yeah, it is.
But there's still a lot of content out there, even at the moment, where you can tell, if you not so much even with a trained eye, you can just tell that it's generated by an AI system. And likewise, content is, we see the Americanisms creeping into our language all the time.
Yeah.
And it just stands out a mile. So yes, there's a place for AI. We're not an agency where we're, categorically saying we'll never use AI. We use AI systems.
Yeah.
But we use it as a tool to aid our productivity. And sometimes, we might feed elements into the system where it just helps collate some of the thought processes and speeds that process up. But in terms of, the thinking is still, done by us as humans within our agency.
Completely.
And, we sit down, we brainstorm, we sit through and come up with loads of different ideas, and we, sketch things out. We still do that whole process.
We do, yeah.
And I think there's still, there's still call for that.
Significant value in it, I think. Yeah. Because if everything and the norm becomes AI this and AI that, and everyone's exposed to it and they see these generate, and like we're always saying, as great and as fantastic as those images are, the impact of them is lessened, because people just become used to being exposed to that kind of, and like you say, it's not a case of not using it efficiently. There's plenty of ways we can use it efficiently, and it could be to the benefit of a client more times than not, to say, look, where we could ordinarily have just given you a static asset, we can now create some quite nice animation elements. We can create a really nice graphic for you here. But the thing to remember is the fundamental structure, the layout, the thought process is still the same as it always was. Yeah. The benefit is that we've been able to create you an asset which before would have probably cost you a fair amount of our time. We can do it much more efficiently now. But the whole concept behind it, and the branding and the layout and the structure, that's all still had the input, the experience, the time that's needed to make that work. And I think that's what people overlook. They just kind of think because it's AI, it will do it all for you, and that's just a catastrophic misconception, in my opinion. It's just too easy to assume things like that, and not really dissect it for what it is. It's like you say, it's an assistant, isn't it? It's a tool, which is a fantastic tool, and it's only going to get better. But it shouldn't be replacing the human logic, when essentially, ultimately, the people that are digesting these graphics, these websites, these marketing are humans. So we can relate to them directly far more still than any AI system could. And I think that's just something people forget.
But
And
maybe in the future we'll be creating content for humanoids.
well, maybe we will. Yeah, cyborgs or AI humans. That's a scary thought. Yeah, maybe so. I think that's a really good point, though. It's using the AI to assist us, but it's
exactly
not.
that.
It's not ever going to replace the fact that we can understand a human as well as anyone else because we are humans. And I think the value of what we can add is only going to be complemented by AI, not replaced by it.
Yeah,
Certainly, in the 5-10 years ahead of where it is currently, I think that's going to be very strong.
Yeah.
Because ultimately humans want to connect with something that's realistic, don't they?
Yeah.
So I think we've still got that kind of to fall back on, hopefully, as a safeguard. But in terms of kind of, I suppose, again, on topic of the podcast of acceptable design, from the web side of things, I would say, again, that's been a victim to a lot of DIY tools out there, a lot of kind of marketing around do it yourself, create your own assets, create your own websites, and I think again that's going to have a negative effect overall on the quality, and I've seen it myself, but the quality of websites that are out there is going to drop because these core fundamental decisions that we would make of what's it for, what's the messaging priority, where do people need to be taken here, is it accessible, is it easy to use, all those things are the fundamentals, much like the fundamentals we spoke about with design, sitting down with pen and paper, just being really frank about what the design's for, who's it aimed at, what does it need to achieve. And I think with websites, again, if you've got a whole plethora of people working on these tools that haven't got the first clue about what they're really trying to do with them or achieve with them, you're going to end up with people just using templates, creating other sites that just look all the same as each other, or they just haven't considered hierarchy. And I think hierarchy is also very important,
definitely,
in design, because you don't want to say a million things to somebody and then be overwhelmed.
Not just design. I mean, look at SEO.
Yeah,
there's definitely a hierarchy or hierarchical structure.
Yeah.
In terms of SEO as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, and some people just don't consider that.
No.
That's one of the things I wanted to touch on as well, that obviously us as a business and loads of other agencies similar size to us, that, we spend a lot of time researching different systems, different techniques. We go to seminars, we attend conferences, we listen to webinars, we do a multitude of things to absorb as much information as we can about our industry and our sector.
Yeah.
Not just to better ourselves and us as a business, but fundamentally to better our clients' businesses.
Yeah, that's the ultimate goal, isn't it?
And add ROI onto their bottom line.
Yeah.
That's all what it's about, really.
Yeah.
That we have a vested interest in making sure that we learn as much as we can, we advise the clients as best we can with the fundamental aim of adding more revenue to the bottom line.
Yeah.
That's really what it's about, or more inquiries if you're charity or whatever.
It is.
So that's really important.
Yeah.
I think.
And the detriment, I think also what we haven't touched on is the detriment of this kind of acceptable, what's deemed of as the new age of acceptable design is the costs of that to your business when you have to redo something, or when you realize that what you've spent money on has been a complete waste of investment. So what you thought you were saving money on by bringing something in house or doing a website cheaper or building it yourself, you realize immediately, hold on, we've got no awareness of why we built the website. We don't know how Google sees our website. We don't understand structure or site mapping or indexing. We don't have the first idea. We don't know anything about SEO, so all our pages could have been unoptimized. We don't know about image optimization, layout, structure, hierarchy. The list goes on. But you've basically got this website then that's just a kind of block in the road that's almost acting negatively on your brand rather than positively. So you've got to...
But you've ticked a box, though.
You have ticked a box of new website. Yeah, exactly that. But then you have to get it done again. So then you go and buy into another kind of pitch of why should you redo our website? Well, this is the reason. This is what's wrong. And again, there's a kind of sea of complexion out there that you don't. I understand from a business's point of view. It's very difficult to see through it.
But that kind of leads on to what I was going to say next, which is if you imagine like a row of shops, right?
Yeah.
You're all doing very similar things.
Yeah.
And, you know, in the past, you would obviously have to make your, you know, your shop window more appealing to another one. And what we're seeing now, again, we're touching on this brand creep element and using these, you know, AI systems or Canva or whatever you're using.
Yeah.
There is just that sea of sameness
Agreed.
now, you know. So if you did now in this day and age, if you had a row of shops, which, you know, hopefully they're still going to be there,
Touch
see all
wood.
the high streets and everything, the shops closing all the
Save
time.
the high
but,
street,
yeah, say there's a row of shops there, you know, you would hope that your shop stands out above another.
Yeah.
But currently, we're seeing that being eroded away.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're seeing a lot of brands looking very similar to another brand. And,
Yeah.
you know, it's hard to determine them apart.
Yeah. They're
Really.
forgetting the core essentials, aren't they? Which is,
Yeah.
like we say, is really harks back to, above all else, harks back to that personal connection of why would a human, which is your target audience, still currently at the moment, like you say, it could be an AI bot at some point.
It could
But
be.
you've got to think back to the human is the target audience. So what does that human want to see from us, and what would build trust with them, and how do we convince them that we're a safe pair of hands? That's the bread and butter for any brand, right? It's that kind of relationship that if I'm going to go and buy a Subway, I've got to buy into the brand. I've got to be on board with their health practices. I've got to think, okay, this food's coming from a place where I'm happy to eat it. I quite like the morals of the brand. You know, even if I'm not consciously thinking that, every time I'm engaging with them, it's going
like Spudgy like.
like Spudgy like, yeah.
Which doesn't exist anymore.
What happened
we
to
found
them?
out.
Yeah, James Martin, and kind of bailed them out, and then they vanished.
But James, if you want to resurrect the brand, you know where we are.
It's a great shout. Yeah, potatoes, fillings, what's not to like? It's a good model. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, you've got to buy into that brand, haven't you? And I think that's what people forget. And by going skipping things, cutting corners, going cheap on things, they're not looking long term of what damage that's doing to the brand, I think. And that's the problem with this decline in design. It seems like a good idea in the short term because you're saving money, you're utilizing people that you've already got in your team a lot of the time. You're able to kind of produce more content at times because obviously in your head the content production is going to be multiplied because you can basically create it in-house. But I think what's not looked at is the overall assessment of how effective is that content and why are you producing that content. Just because you're putting a load of content out there doesn't mean that's what you should be doing. It doesn't mean it's going to be more effective because you're putting more of it out there. You could be having a lot less content that you've spent money with an agency on to get finesse, to get actually tuned to the result of that, and it's far more successful than say 10 or 20 social posts.
Quality, not quantity.
It is, yeah, it is. I mean, like you say, there are times when, you know, again, which brands overlook, when quantity does come into it, where if you're running a campaign, you need to be on top of, have you done offline marketing with that? Is there a website that people can find for it? Is it going out on social media? Are the messages consistent?
Yeah.
And that's where I think there is an element of the quantity can help reinforce the message.
Yeah.
But again, that's the outcome of a dedicated campaign.
Yeah.
And it's not just winging it from somebody that's doing something very isolated with the rest of the team being disconnected from. And I think, again, is this design kind of acceptance, a lower quality design acceptance. I think that's something that's prevalent in businesses where there's not the hierarchy of experience there. So if somebody is in that role, like we spoke about earlier, as a marketing department or a designer, if the buck stops with them, or there's nobody above them to kind of question things, then that output's going to be very level and it's going to be very consistent, and they're not really going to be thinking about the effectiveness of it or why they're putting stuff out. And that's also a very important, for me, it's a very important point of an in-house team, is who's questioning things for them.
Yeah.
Because for us, that's what we're doing all the time in-house.
It is.
It's questioning why we're doing things. Is that effective? Isn't that effective?
Yeah.
And that's a very, I think it's a very poignant point in terms of the lower quality of design, because again, if these tools come about and people think, oh, we can use this and we can use that, if there's nobody actually saying to them, is that the best thing to be doing? What about this? Or have you considered the fact that the audience are going to be, overwhelmed by seeing that same message all the time? Then en masse, they're going to all jump on board.
Yeah,
And I think that's a big issue.
it is.
And results to, ultimately long term consumer trust drops. The marketing itself becomes more ineffective. I think that's just
Well, that's it. Ultimately, it is. I mean, I've mentioned the phrase numerous times throughout this podcast, but it's the ROI, really.
Yeah.
It's, if your target audience is, not engaging with the brand and the trust just basically erodes away, then, what ultimately is that going to do to your business?
Yeah.
Your business won't be there.
Yeah.
So the importance of design, I think you can't underestimate the importance of professional graphic design. It's there for a reason,
Yeah.
and should be around for forever.
Yeah. Agreed.
Because ultimately we are skilled professionals, we have experience, we can, trawl through all the pitfalls, and we've learnt through, trial and error in some cases over the years, and we can offer best advice. And fundamentally, I mean, it is better bang for buck, really, because ultimately we can create the collateral probably quicker than an in-house team can.
Yeah, efficiency wise, you're right.
It's more on point, so we can, trawl through all the dross, and make sure that the piece of collateral is very concise. It's got the right message, the right tone of voice, the right image style.
Yeah.
The brand style is consistent, and ultimately, if it helps build trust and better ROI for your business, whether, like I say, whether it's monetary ROI or it's more inquiries,
engagement,
or engagement, then we've done our job well.
I agree. Yeah, I think that the top tips to take away from this, kind of from the podcast itself and what we've summarised, is to prioritise your design and the quality of it, and make sure you're always looking at it and assessing it, and see it as an investment. Like kind of everything we do as a marketing agency has got to be seen as an investment. We never want to propose something to a client and they say, "Oh, how much is that going to be?" And it's immediately, if they're talking to us like it's a cost, we know their head's not in the right place for that particular part of what we're offering them, essentially, whatever that might be, whether it's web, whether it's marketing, whether it's design. If they're immediately saying, "Well, that's going to cost me X, that's going to come out of the whole purpose of everything we do is to return some results, if not extensive results, based on the cost that they've spent, to far supersede whatever they spent with us. That's the whole purpose. Yeah. So immediately, once we've got that conversation with the client where they think something's a cost, it's a kind of educational exercise from our standpoint to be like, it's not going to be a cost. That's not the way to look at this. You need to work out it's not something immediate. It's 12, it's 2, it's 3 years down the line, 12 months, 2 years, 3 years down the line. So it's got to be seen like that, because that's how marketing works, right? It's you're going to get back what you put in. But if you see what you put in as a cost, you're never going to put enough in to get back what you need.
Yeah, it's completely the wrong mindset. Like you say, if you see it as a cost, don't come and talk to us.
No, you're looking at it in a completely wrong way.
It has to be an investment. That's why we're here. And we've proved it time and time again.
Yeah.
And that's why you go into any, well-respected agency, design, marketing, web agency, they're worth their salt, because they are experienced in making sure that the money that you invest with them, they're going to deliver.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
And if they're not doing that, then you've got every right then to
it's on their head,
go and find another agency, or just do it yourself. But you're never obviously going to do it as well as an agency. So we would definitely advocate going to an agency that is well respected, and like we said, it's an investment, not a cost.
Yeah, I think so. So it's prioritizing the design as an investment. It's any key decision makers in the business, so it's making sure that they're educated on the importance of why they're doing those things, what those tasks entail, and why a professional or an agency or a good freelancer would provide that for them, above somebody that's in-house that just doesn't have that area of expertise, that awareness, that skill set. and the cost that could have ultimately on the business long term. So I think that's a really key point as well to take home. And then balancing, like we mentioned, so balancing AI with actual creative input, so still valuing the creative input from the agency, making sure the agency, a lot of the time, like ourselves, with copywriting, AI can be a very efficient assistant for copywriting, but you need to feed it the correct amount of content first. You need to have the points you want to make first. You need to have great examples. You need to also understand that the output it gives you, whether that's right or wrong for the client, and very often we have to tweak it and change it. And so it's that input that we'd have, which again is utilizing AI, but it's not replacing anything that we would have done before. It's only assisting with it. So it's being very aware with that, I think, and above all else, just working with people that are skilled in their given professions. So if somebody's not experienced or very aware of what they're doing, or has extensive knowledge in that field, then is that the right person to be assigning that role to? And I think that's just something you've got to really consider in terms of acceptable design.
Is that somebody you should be entrusting your business with?
Exactly.
That's essentially what you're doing. If you have no other shop window other than whatever your designer is going to create for you, then you've got to trust that person, that individual, wholeheartedly,
100%.
whether they're in-house or external.
100%.
So,
and that tone of voice and that copy, I mean, even if the tone of voice is in the visual aesthetic, it doesn't have to be copy all the time. The tone that you're portraying to your customer, that's, in this day and age, with everything being so digital, that's a very, very strong touch point in terms of how someone engages with your brand. And if that's your, if you don't have salespeople on the front line, and you don't have the ability to go out and talk to so many people, or your brand is very digitally focused, and the engagement is very digital anyway in the current climate, you've got to be very aware that that's a very huge touch point that those potential clients are having with you. And if you're willing to let that that touch point be the buck stop with somebody that's not skilled in that department, then that's it's a very high risk, I would say.
It is. So I think that sort of concludes our
I think so.
podcast for today. What we would say is, like, if you think that your design is good enough, then it's probably not. And seek the help and advice of a creative web/marketing agency such as ours. Even if it's a conversation or a chat or an assessment, it doesn't have to be too formal. We're very happy to kind of just give an opinion on something or advice, and see if there's anything that you want help with or guidance. So thank you very much, and there'll be another podcast coming, or pubcast I should say, coming again soon. See you soon. Thanks, guys. Thanks. Cheers.